The following audio is via a Skype call.
Thank you, Eric Kramer. Hi, everybody. TGIF indeed. I'm Gary Mantz.
I'm Suzanne Mitchell.
Together we are Mantz and Mitchell in your ears for the hour if our luck holds up. And, of course, we stay on the good side of bad boy Benny Mathers at the board. How are you today, sir?
Good. Come on, big winner. And yes, 21. There's your luck. Got it.
I like that.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you.
I lived in Las Vegas for 5 years, and if I lived there for 50 years, I would never be able to figure out the arcane intricacies of craps. If you talk to crap dealers in Las Vegas, how does this game work? Some of them will say, I don't know.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You try not to, as they say, crap out their new shooter and so forth. But in terms of explaining how it works and why things work the way they do, there are people who work that game for many years and find themselves at a loss for words ultimately.
I might agree with you. I guess the only thing I've always been told is on the pass line. Just the pass line the whole time. That's all I know.
And that's how they know you're a rookie in from out of town playing it safe, and that's a smart way to go, by the way. So anybody headed that way, listen to Brother Benny.
Yeah, right. Yeah, take my word for it. Uh-huh.
We're here today, Suzanne and I, to indulge ourselves in an hour of metaphysical Q&A with someone who has a versatile mind. He works both hemispheres of his brain, and I'm going to try to find out from Garnet Schulhauser here momentarily whether that brain of his has a lot of intersections between those hemispheres, or is it more like a two-lane highway? I think a lot hangs on the answer to that question as we get to know this gentleman. Suzanne, how about if I go ahead and read some of the mad props here? There's a nice bio online at Garnet's website, and we'll have him mention that and discuss it later on in this hour. But I'll do the mad props, if you please.
That sounds good to me. And
Okay.
This is his third time on today.
Third visit.
Yep.
Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island. Been there, done that, loved it. He lives there with his wife, Kathy, and little dog, Abby. After practicing corporate law for over 30 years in Calgary with two blue-chip law firms, he retired in 2008, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. Since the release of his first book, Garnet has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements and has been interviewed on over 120 radio talk shows. Maybe we're number 121. I don't know if we're included in that list. We got to get on there. Broadcasting from studios in the U.S., Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia. So if you make allowance for accents, as long as you're in the English-speaking world, there's a good chance you know about this gentleman. His books, Dancing on a Stamp, Dancing Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and his latest, Dance of Eternal Rapture, have so much to say comprehensively about the universe, about our planet in the context of the greater reality and the many holy personages that are trying to teach us the essence of who we really are. It's the best way I know how to put a spin on it, a cosmic spin, as it were. So why don't we dispense with that and talk to the man himself, Garnet Schulhauser, on the phone from B.C. How you doing, Garnet?
Pretty good, Gary. How about you?
I'm doing pretty doggone well. When I get a guy with a versatile mind like yours, my challenge going in is always where to start, knowing that we are only bounded by the clock, and we have a couple of short breaks. So for the rest of this hour, let's have fun talking about metaphysics. Maybe we'll work in some news, some personal biography of yours, a story or two from me and Suzanne, and see where it takes us.
Sounds good.
And I guess the first thing I want to bring up is what has been going on with Mother Gaia. And I love the theory of Gaia, the idea that Earth is a living, breathing entity, Mother Earth writ large, and a distinct entity in this living, breathing cosmos. And Gaia may well have natural processes. Sometimes I wonder if she also has preferences. And that preference now and then shows up in terms of weather, perhaps. Maybe I'm just being poetic in my way. But when we talk about Gaia and we talk about weather events, Garnet, I'd be very curious to get your perspective and to find out if you're finding any news out, if you've got your antenna up to receive any insights into a couple of big hurricanes. As a matter of fact, make that 3, because we had Harvey, we had Irma, we had the hurricane, was it?
Maria.
Maria, thank you, in Puerto Rico. So that's 3 right there. The wildfires continue unabated, I'm very sorry to say, in Southern California. With all of this, Garnet, is Gaia trying to tell us all something through these wild weather events?
Absolutely. In my last conversation with her, she said that she is basically shooting a warning shot across our bow. She wants us to wake up and realize that we have to stop polluting Mother Earth and stop abusing the other animals on our planet and change our ways. And because we have not been listening to what she's been telling us in terms of curtailing our pollution, she is basically she has the power to step up the number and intensity of natural disasters in our planet, like wildfires and hurricanes and floods and so on. And she intends to continue to increase that until we wake up and realize we have to change our ways. So, yeah, she's absolutely sending us a very strong message, and it's going to continue until we change our ways and stop the pollution and abuse that we heap on her other creatures.
I heard some time ago that weather could end up being one of the next big global concerns. And do you get the sense that the weather actually reflects somehow the energy of the people who are living on it?
I don't get that sense. I get more the sense that the change in the weather, change in the climate is something that's being orchestrated by Gaia, by Mother Earth. And I think it's her way, as I said, of trying to push us back because there's so much negativity going on our planet where the violence and the fighting and the abuse of other creatures and particularly the pollution. So she's really trying to give us a warning to say we have to change, or the power of Mother Nature is huge, like way larger than all the weapons of mass destruction that we have. She can really unleash a lot of things if she chooses to. She's not trying to wipe us off. She's just trying to wake us up and get us to change our ways. And so I can just see these natural disasters increasing as we go on. You can call it climate change or whatever you want to call it, but it's really being orchestrated by Gaia.
Garnet, we've been a warring peoples forever. Human beings seem to be that. Gary got a book in by accident. He ordered one book and a different book came in, and it turned out to be Homer's Iliad. It is an ancient poem, an ancient work of Greek mythology. I don't know if any of it is historical or if it's strictly a made-up story, but in reading it, it is one long, long book about men fighting and about what they're fighting over and how they're fighting and how they're being killed with lots of details in it. And I shake my head and I say, this is absolutely no different than turning on the news and hearing about a shooting here or some violence that's going on. We've been violent for millennia. So when do you think that Gaia suddenly decided that it was going to wake us up? Because it didn't happen during the Greek times that I know of. Does it take that long for Mother Earth to decide to do something?
No, I think she's not as concerned. She's not happy about the violence that we have amongst ourselves, but she's not as concerned about that. It doesn't affect her that much. What really affects her is the pollution. And we really didn't get into the big-time pollution game until the Industrial Revolution. And since that time, our ability to pollute the planet has increased exponentially. And so now it's really coming to a head, and now she's taking action. You're right. There wasn't a lot of natural disasters and weather change way back then, but there always was violence, and that's just the nature of humankind. But she's really just focusing now on how we're polluting the planet that we live in.
Almost as though Mother Earth herself is a separate entity from the creatures that are on it. The planet itself has its own life. The planet has its own breath, its own, we know it has its own geology. It has mountains and seas, but I hear you talking about Earth as though it also has its own life force that's separate from the life that lives on it.
Yeah, it really does. It has its own consciousness, and I've had a conversation with that consciousness. So it is separate from the creatures that live on Mother Earth, but it is sort of it acknowledges that its role is to provide a home for all the creatures on the planet, and she wants that home to be, in peaceful harmony, without any pollution and without conflict between humans and other animals, and so that she's very fiercely protective of her flora and fauna, and she wants to have a very balanced ecosystem where all creatures and plants and everything can live together in harmony. And what's happened is, of course, that humankind has upset that balance in the last couple of centuries, and it's getting increasingly more so. And that's what's really upsetting her. She has nothing against humankind per se. She just acknowledges that, if humans disappeared off the face of the earth, she would go back very quickly to a very balanced ecosystem, the way it was before we became so intrusive.
Well, it's not exactly peace on earth when you watch National Geographic and the lions and the tigers are running across the veldt to go kill the ibex. So, you say peaceful, but really animals do kill other animals for food, for living. So when you're talking about the balanced ecosystem, it must have much more to do with pollution than actually peaceful living, because it doesn't look peaceful when I see the animal world.
Well, that's true. Animals do kill each other because, a tiger cannot survive on plants. Their system just they will die. They have to have food. They have to have meat, and so that's all part of how the creatures on our planet develop. There's some carnivores, there's some herbivores, some omnivores. So that doesn't bother her. It may seem violent when you see a lion killing an antelope on the African plain, but the lion does not hate the antelope. It's not trying to exact revenge or carry out some hatred motive against the antelope. It's food. It's just plain and simple food, and they kill what they need to eat, and then that's it. Whereas humans, humans go off and kill animals that they don't need for food, and so there's a big difference there, and humans kill each other, because of greed and the need for power. Animals don't do that. A lion's not trying to acquire power by killing the antelope. It's just trying to feed itself and its family. So it may seem violent, but that sort of interplay between carnivores and their food, that's just a natural part of the fauna on planet Earth, and it's not unpeaceful in the sense of how Gaia views what humans are doing on our planet. That's just natural for her.
When I think of life and death, that whole struggle looked at in and of itself, it's exactly, in my mind, as you have just described it, Garnet. Unlike other creatures, man, if you are of a certain mentality, and particularly if you're sociopathic or psychopathic, you can actually kill other human beings, countless human beings, purely for, let's say, pleasure, yes, or another secondary reinforcement, which would be money. That's one of the most chilling thoughts I get when I think of people killing other people because they need the money. It's not a matter of being conscientious. It's unconscionable. It's a matter of needing money. And if you're pretty good with a gun or whatever your instrumentality happens to be, you can actually kill others of your species in order to have financial gain.
That's exactly right, and that's the big distinction between humankind and the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom doesn't have money, has no need for money, and that's not what they're pursuing. But humans certainly have been doing that for ages, as Suzanne mentioned, right back to ancient Greek times, and well before that. We've always been a very violent society.
Garnet, I would love to know, I made mention earlier of how I wonder how your mind works, whether there are intersections at the hemispheres of your brain, right brain, left brain. You're a retired corporate lawyer, okay? And here you're talking metaphysics, and you speak deeply about it all the time. I don't know if that's a 2-lane highway or if they intersect, but how does a guy like you, with so many years as a corporate lawyer under your belt, gain that kind of naturalistic appreciation of the cosmos and the role of Gaia or Mother Earth in the grand scheme of things? I can't imagine Perry Mason saying the things you just said.
Well, that's very true, and it was in that sense, it was a difficult transition for me because I spent so many years using the analytical side of my brain as a lawyer. But what really changed it for me was my meeting with my spirit guide Albert, and just by talking to him, listening to him, asking him questions, I gradually sort of moved from the left side of my brain over to the right side, there's still elements of the left side that spring forth, from time to time. But I'm getting more into the right side of my brain and more into the creative and the visualization and dealing with metaphysics. And so, when I was practicing law, there's no way I would be talking like I am with you now. But it's been a gradual transition to the point where I am now, which is a really good space, I think. I mean, I was just when you're analytical like I used to be, you just miss so many things, and you're too skeptical, too questioning. Now I just feel very comfortable with where I am based upon my interaction with Albert.
And we do have a couple of minutes before we have to go to break. So with something so momentous having happened to you, of course you can do it in 2 minutes. But if there's an elevator speech about Albert, if such an animal exists, explain in 2 minutes, if you would, sir, what it was when you met Albert and how that had such a profound impact on the trajectory of your own life.
Well, I was still practicing law when I met him, and he showed up in my life as a homeless man on the street. We eventually got into a dialogue, and he said, look, I'm one of your spirit guides. I'm here to help you, answer your questions, and I want you to write a book. Eventually turned out to be 4 books about our dialogue and our adventures. So he was there he's basically enlisted me as one of his messengers to promulgate his revelations so that everyone had access to it. And so he's an amazing, very wise, compassionate spirit.
Well, that was pretty quick.
Pretty quick. And a spirit, and just to, before we take our break, Albert, now, is this a comfortable spirit to be around? I can see where you are challenged, maybe continuously challenged by Albert and the effects of interacting with your spirit guide. But was there a point where you got comfortable receiving these visits and maybe seeking them out?
Yeah, it took about 5 minutes into our first conversation to get me comfortable. He's just that kind of a guy. He just makes, if anybody talks to him, they'd be very comfortable with him very quickly. He's just that kind of a spirit.
The full 5 minutes. Wow. The guy's a slow learner.
I'm slower than most people.
Well, you are Garnet Schulhauser, who is an extraordinarily wise man who, in your maturity, has a background not only in the law, in the corporate world, the hard scrabble existence, and then making money, being prosperous, and then spiritually reaching out and entering an entirely new realm. Through your kindness, you are willing to share it with the world, and with a sense of duty, no less. And that makes you an extraordinary guest. That's why we're so happy we have you for this hour, Garnet. We need to take a break. After a couple of minutes, we will continue our conversation with Garnet Schulhauser. The man's about the dancing, cosmic dancing, that is, and we'll get into that on the other side of this break. You're listening to Mantz and Mitchell right here on Seattle's home of alternative talk, AM 1150.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.
Hi, this is Susan Harmon, inviting you to join me every Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Pacific Time, for the Susan Harmon Hour. I'm always curious, and I enjoy discussing a wide array of interesting and provocative subjects with fascinating and erudite guests. If you're looking for grounded authenticity with a twist, you'll want to join us for a fast-moving and informative hour right here on Alternative Talk 1150.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're going to go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you going to do? You're going to go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You got to dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. No, you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hello, my name is Marie Manucheri. I'm an energy intuitive, author, and host of Where Energy and Medicine Meet. During the show, I answer callers' questions, intuitively, of course, and provide invaluable guidance. I also interview others who I believe are on the leading edge of thought. Tune in on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on 11:50 a.m. in Seattle, or live wherever you are at energyintuitive.com.
Going our own way every day. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Mantz and Mitchell, and thank you, Bert Kempfert. That's Jingo Jango. Always a fun song to play around Christmas time. One of the things that we were talking about before the break with Garnet Schulhauser is that you mentioned that Albert was one of your spirit guides, and we have talked before with other guests who have said that we all have multiple spirit guides, and they seem to step forward when we are connecting with whatever it is that they need to teach us, or whatever their specialty is. Have you connected with any of your other spirit guides besides Albert, Garnet?
Yes, I did meet one of my other spirit guides. Her name is Alina, and she came onto the spirit guide team after I retired from the law to sort of help me on this next phase of my life. And so there's Albert and Lena. I do have a couple more, but I have not yet met them, and I don't know who they are. But yeah, everyone has several spirit guides, and they're basically our coaches there to help us as we move along on our journey. You know, when we come to a decision point, a fork in the road, they'll be telling us which fork we should take. And they do that based upon what we have planned beforehand, before we're born in our life plans. And so they're there at 24/7. They never leave us, and they do change as we progress through life. There will be a change up of the guides. Some will leave, and the new ones will come in depending on what we need at any particular point in our life.
And that leads me to my next question. We talk to a lot of psychic mediums on our show, and they will talk about our loved ones who have been with us on this side and are now on the other side. And one of the prevailing thoughts seems to be that our loved ones are not with us 24/7 because they have lives of their own. And so I spoke with a medium who told me my dad was learning how to play a musical instrument on the other side. Now that takes some time. And so our loved ones, our parents, our grandparents, people who are in our ancestral line or who have been with us, are not necessarily with us all the time from the other dimension. But my understanding about spirit guides is that generally, as you're saying, they are with you. Is there a distinction that you make between your spirit guides and your deceased loved ones in that same way?
Yes, there is. I mean, and you're quite right, Suzanne, that our other deceased loved ones, they're not sort of constantly with us or watching what we're doing or trying to connect with us because they have other things to do. But our spirit guides are special spirits that we recruited before we incarnated to be our guides, to be our coaches. And so they are, and they can be people that we've had previous lives with before. Sometimes I've had occasion to learn that somebody's spirit guide happened to be their deceased father from this life. And so sometimes your spirit guides will come in after they're deceased and become one of your guides as part of the transition of guides. And so, but once they sort of sign on to be a guide, they're with you constantly, sending you messages, trying to coach you. and which is not the same as for your other relatives who, as you say, have other things to do. And but they can be available if you need them. If you try to contact them through a medium, then they will often show up, and they will know sort of, it's like somebody's ringing their phone. It's like, okay, I better go over there and speak to Suzanne because she's wanting to make contact. So that's sort of how it works, as I understand it.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because your understanding comes from a very unique experience that you've had. And it leads us to the next thing that Gary and I were talking about this morning when we said, with a man like Garnet, what kinds of things would we like to know about? And one of the other things that came up as far as our interest has to do with the Akashic records. And I know that many of our listeners will have a sense about what that is, but there may be some people who don't. So I wanted you to talk about what the Akashic records are and your opportunity to look at them.
Yeah, the Akashic records are, they store the records of every life that's ever been lived anywhere in the universe. And how I made contact with them was that Albert took me on the spirit side into he called it the Hall of Records, and we went into it was like a viewing room, a private room. There was a holographic globe sort of floating in the center of the room. And then Albert knew how to work this. I didn't, but he could just bring up sort of any past life, any segment from myself, from other people. And it's sort of like you're watching a 3D movie. So it's really quite fascinating, quite crystal clear. And Albert could move it forward, quickly, go in slow motion, go back, jump around, however he wanted to focus on any particular aspect of a life. And I saw a few segments of my previous lives on this planet, which was quite fascinating. The very interesting thing about the Akashic records is that when you're viewing, for example, when you're viewing your own life, or the current one after you pass away, or some of your previous lives, you also get to hear the thoughts and feel the emotions of the people that you interacted with in that life, which is really an amazing learning tool, because it really hits home to you that sometimes you can say something and very, very unintentionally hurt someone else. And so if you said something cruel to a coworker one day, you would actually get to feel the hurt of the person and the hurt feelings of the person that you spoke to, even though you didn't intend to, which really it's a great learning tool, because then you can really understand the effects of what you do in any given life and how other people react to it. So it's really an amazing experience, great learning tool.
Is the opposite also true, Garnet? If you have somehow inspired or said just the right thing to somebody when they needed to hear it, does that also come through in the Hall of Records?
Absolutely, yeah. You get the good and you get the bad, and it's really heartwarming when you can feel the sort of the intense gratitude of somebody that you've helped in some way. So that makes you feel good, and also sort of teaches you as a soul, in your next life, I'm going to try to do more of that because I really like the feeling of the people that I've helped. So you get the good and the bad, and it's just an amazing way of looking at your past life. And every soul, when you pass from this physical life right now, one of the first things you do is have a life review of the current life you just left, and you get that in great detail. And sometimes it can be very comforting. Sometimes it could be you can be actually a bit embarrassed about some of the things you did, but it's not intended to make you feel bad. It's intended really to help you learn from what you've done in this past life, learn about how your interactions with other people affect them, so that you can sort of, next time you have a life on Earth, you can try to do better, to get rid of the bad things and increase the good things.
I love the idea behind that, but there's this sticking point for me. Garnet, maybe you can help me work through this. I think now, I've heard this from untold numbers of people. I get to talk to a lot of metaphysical types doing this show, and in my church life as well. Suzanne and I are members here in Sarasota of a strongly metaphysical church. When the thing of it is, I don't understand why we have to forget so much. Hans Holzer, the great parapsychologist, the ghost hunter, he might be the original ghost hunter, wrote all those books, and he talked about reincarnation in some of them. And specifically, he talked about how our souls come through a mist of forgetfulness. I always thought that was a romantic turn of phrase, a mist of forgetfulness. And then we take on a new body, and in this new incarnation, we forget who we were. Maybe we did sign a soul contract. Maybe we made some agreements of some sort, but there is this element of forgetfulness that seems to be part of the grand design, and that to me seems to be a contradiction in terms. If I'm here to learn lessons, why should I be forgetting?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's one that troubled me for some time as well after Albert first told me. But he explained it in a very good way to me. He said, look, there's really two reasons for that. He said that if you remembered exactly what you had put in your life plan when you're here on Earth, he said that would be too easy for you to go through life. It would be like a teacher giving her students the questions and answers to a final exam before the exam. Like, what's the point of doing it? So part of the challenge of being here is working your way through life without having a step-by-step roadmap as to where you should go. You're supposed to figure that out for yourself. Then the other reason that you don't remember who you are or any of your past lives is that it could be just absolutely overwhelming. Imagine if you had 200 previous lives on Earth. If you remembered all of those lives when you're here, it would be the information would be overwhelming. You'd feel, you'd remember all the times that you were a bad dude and perhaps killed people or hurt people. You'd remember all the tragedies you suffered, and that would be just too big of a burden to carry around in this life. It would sort of detract from what you plan to do here. So that's the other reason that you forget who you are and all your other previous lives. So it's a bit of you come here with a bit of a blank slate, and you have to sort of stumble around, try to hear the messages from your guides as to where you should be going, and that's the biggest challenge that we have as humans on this planet. We don't remember who we are or where we came from.
The stumbling part I have down. There are a lot of lessons I need to master. Yeah. And it's a good thing that I'm convinced, of course, I could be totally wrong. We all could be wrong about this. Maybe there's no such thing to reincarnation. We're just extinguished like a candle. I sure hope not. I tend to look at reincarnation aspirationally. I like to think that next time around, I'm not only going to do it better, I want to do it spectacularly. And so that's the ambition element in human life. Yes.
I had a question. Since you had a chance to look at several of your lives, Garnet, did you discover that there were themes? Were there things that were repeating from life to life? Either I don't want to say that you didn't get the lesson, but let's say you wanted to explore a theme from more than one angle, maybe as a perpetrator, maybe as a victim. Did you, in looking at your own lives, did you see things that you recognized in this lifetime? Not so much. Well, I haven't sort of figured out how they affect this lifetime, but I did see a couple of lives where what happened in one life sort of played out in another life in a different way. So I would understand, what I had done wrong in the first life. So in one case, I was a traveling gambler in the Wild West in the 1870s, and ended up. Because I beat somebody at a poker game who then challenged me to a duel. I ended up killing this guy, even though he was totally mismatched because I was a great gunfighter. So instead of just sort of ignoring this guy and riding out of town, I let my pride get the better of me because he was calling me a coward. And so I just turned around and said, okay, let's have the duel, and I killed him. And then so what happened then in another life in India, I was a young lady, a teenager whose parents had decided to arrange a marriage for me. And I didn't like the fact that I was going to be married to someone I'd never met, and so I rebelled, eventually sort of ran away from home, which was a great dishonor to my family because they had arranged this with the other family. And so my father's pride was so wounded because of that he sought me out and eventually found me hiding in a rooming house, and he stabbed me to death. So there was a lesson for me about how false pride, can affect our lives, and so I was on both ends of that one. So that sort of played out. I don't know. I mean, I think that some of that is carried forward in this life because I know that I have too much pride in many ways, especially when I was practicing law, and I would get really offended and angry if somebody wounded my pride.
So I think there was still a bit of a carryover, and now I can see how that all plays out. And that often happens through lives as you get you don't learn a lesson in one life, you get to confront it in another life, perhaps on the receiving end rather than on the giving end. So quite fascinating.
Yes, I thought so too. This idea of themes in multiple lives has come up before, and I have found that quite fascinating to think that you could experience it as you did from two different sides. One in which you were the killer, and in another life where you were killed. And I think it's worth looking at where we stumble, where we bump up against things that are very hard to resolve, and look at them in kind of a bigger picture frame. Like if we don't really get through the things that we are here to get through, then it may be likely that we're going to be looking at it again from perhaps the same angle or a different angle. But there seems to be things that we really want to experience, maybe for the sole purpose of understanding them. You have an understanding about things in a different way when you are actively involved in it, as opposed to just watching a movie. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because when you can watch from the spirit side what's going on our planet, it's just sort of like book learning, watching a movie, and you don't really get the full extent of it until you incarnate and feel it in physical form. And so, and you're right. If we feel like we should be learning some lesson or beating down some challenge, and we fail to do so in one life, good chance we're going to come back and say, as a matter of pride, I'm trying that again because I'm not going to be defeated. And so that's why themes sort of carry forward through a number of lives. Very interesting. I've been speaking with one person who said who was blind from birth and who had a past life regression, found out that the reason she was blind from birth was because in a previous life she was a cruel leader who liked to poke out eyes of some of their subjects. And so
yikes!
Yes, and so because of that, she came back born blind. It's sort of like, okay, now I'm going to see what it's like to be blind. Very interesting. That happens so many times.
Wow.
If that's the case, when I get over to the other side, I want to look up Vlad the Impaler and see how he's doing.
Who knows? He may be your next-door neighbor.
Great. My next door neighbor, well, on one side maybe, not so much the other. We're between neighbors. We have our favorites around here. We're talking with Garnet Schulhauser, and we will continue talking to this esteemed gentleman on the other side of a short break. I want to tell a little story about my trip to Victoria of many, many years ago and how it taught me about reciprocity, sometimes the immediacy of reciprocity. I think there's a principle involved there. We are Mantz and Mitchell. Stick with us. Back in a couple of minutes on AM 1150.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.
Staying connected with Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell is easy. Just go to mantzandmitchell.com for the latest info on topics and guests. Friend Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell on their Facebook pages and like the Mantz and Mitchell show page at facebook.com/MantzandMitchell. If you're on Twitter, share a follow with Gary and Suzanne at Mantz Mitchell. Join Gary and Suzanne Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. for an unusual show that covers everything from personal growth to the paranormal.
Here's an amazing act. Here's a tremendous act. Here's a startling act. The amazing, the thrilling, the greatest, spectacular, incredible, exciting, wonderful, world-famed, most unusual novelty act.
The home of the A-Team of Alternative Talk is mantzandmitchell.com. Heard right here on Alternative Talk 1150 AM or streaming live from your computer anywhere.
Hey, everyone. Let's all stop what we're doing right now and take a moment. That felt good, huh? Just like that, we had a nice, special sort of moment together. Of course, they don't all need to be quiet moments to be special. They could be loud moments, goofy moments, sporty moments, dorky moments, moments where we talk or walk or just hang out. It doesn't really matter. They all count. Because every time dads like us take a moment like that to spend with our kids, well, it's pretty momentous. Sounds like somebody agrees. So let's take a moment to make a moment. Today, call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
On Friday, Mantz and Mitchell welcome back Garnet Schulhauser, who makes a powerful spiritual statement about the world we live in.
On Saturday, Paul Jeffrey Davids and John Selby join us for 2 full hours talking about their book, Blowing America's Mind.
They reveal their personal experiences with hypnosis while attending Princeton University and the involvement of the CIA in mind control.
Bringing you fascinating talk since 2007. We are Mantz and Mitchell, Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 on Alternative Talk AM 1150.
Find out the latest about your favorite shows on Alternative Talk 1150. Check out 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Mantz and Mitchell. Our guest this hour, Garnet Schulhauser from Victoria, BC. We played Dean Martin's Let It Snow. It's not quite snowing here in Sarasota, Florida, and it may not this winter. But as we were discussing the weather before the show, I was saying that we were having 80-degree weather in Fahrenheit, and Garnet Schulhauser said it was about 10 degrees Celsius. So there you go. There's a difference right there.
It's snowing in Texas. I don't know if you heard that this morning.
Yes,
we did.
There you go.
Garnet, this is a time when we want to let our listeners know how they can get your books, what your website is, any appearances you might be making, anything that you would like to do to let our listeners connect with you. So please tell them all about your books and how they can do that.
Okay, the best source of information is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's not easy to remember, but if you Google Dancing on a Stamp or any of my book titles, you can get to my website. And there's information on all 4 of my books. You can download free excerpts. You can watch book videos. You can dial into all my social media sites like Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and so on. I have buy links on my book to all the popular online stores like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a number of others. If you just click on that, you can get right to the place where you can buy my books. My email address is on my website, and I'd certainly welcome comments or questions from any of your listeners. I'm eager to, and I so far I've been able to respond to every email I've gotten, so I'm anxious to hear from them.
And you've got your own YouTube channel.
I do? Yeah, so sorry, I forgot to mention that, yes.
Yeah,
on my
very
website,
exciting.
I have links to my YouTube channel, and on my YouTube channel, I post recordings of all of my radio shows and interviews and conference presentations, so you can go there and just dial into this show here will be put up as soon as I download the recording. And as I mentioned, this is radio show number 131 for me, and so people can get all this show plus all the previous ones by clicking on my website on my YouTube icon.
And we're in that list now 3 times because you've been on 2015, 2016, and now 2017. So we're pretty thrilled to have 3 of those numbers out of the 131.
Garnet, if you were to write a 5th book, what do you think you would call it? I'll suggest a title. I think you should call it Oi, Again with the Dancing.
I'll take that under advisement, Gary. Haven't thought about that. Haven't started book 5. I'm still waiting for Albert to give me my marching orders because he's the guy who's going to provide me with the information and material for my next book. And he told me when I asked him a while back, he said, just put it on hold for now. You need to have a rest from the writing, and someday he's just going to show up in my life again and say, come on, let's go, and away we go. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm pretty sure there will be a book 5. And and don't be surprised if the word dance or dancing isn't in the title, Gary.
Thank you for that, Garnet, because I wanted to ask you, by way of analogy, what does this dancing theme or motif mean to you?
Well, to me it means it's just a reflection that, in my view and Albert's view, is that life on Earth is a dance. You know, we're all in a dance, and it's up to us to make it a dance of joy or to be a dance at a dirigible funeral. It's like it's our choice as to how we're going to dance, and so I sort of thought that was a good theme. And it all really began back in my first book when Dancing on a Stamp. That title came from when I was down and out about something, complaining to Albert, and he said, well, your problem is that you spent too much of a time, standing in one spot, like you have leg shackles on, and imagine if you're in the middle of a big, beautiful ballroom and you're standing there and everyone else is swirling all around, and you're staying in one spot. And he said, I have to stop dancing on a stand. So that became the title of my first book, and then it just occurred to me that it was a good theme to carry forward, to let people know that life here should be regarded as an adventure. We should dance our way through life and learn what we can, and at the end of the day, we're always going to end up back in the spirit side. So it's sort of a happy message. I mean, people usually dance when they're happy, and that's what I hope that everyone will try to do, to try to dance their way through life.
Thank you for that explanation. That is meaningful. Something that meant something to me occurred back in, I'm going back to 1991. I visited Victoria. I was in another relationship at the time, and walking down Government Street, which is just a gorgeous place. You keep going, I believe that's where you will see the Empress Hotel, where you can have high tea. You are near the Inner Harbor. Gorgeous place in North America. And the blocks can be rather short, so it's a good place to take a walk. As my partner at the time and I were walking down Government Street, there was a apparent homeless person who came up and asked if we could spare any change. Well, I happened to have a loonie, that's a $1 currency, Canadian term, a loonie, in my pocket, and I gave it to this gentleman, and he said, "God bless you," and I said, "God bless you as well," and he walked away. And then I got the royal nunsuch from my partner, who thought it was silly for me to just be handing money to people who come up on the street. Don't encourage that sort of thing. Why did you give away that $1? And I said, well, it's $1, and who knows, maybe the guy needs it. I don't automatically assume that they're running off to buy Labatt's Blue with it, or doing anything nefarious. I handed a guy $1, a loonie. We walked exactly 1 block toward the Empress. And before we crossed the street, there we had to stop for a light. I looked down at the curb, and there was a $5 Canadian bill right there in the dust, abutting the curb. $5, and I'm looking at a picture of the Queen. So I picked that up, and I turned to my partner, and I said, "Is it okay if I keep this?" I gave away $1 at one intersection, and then a block later, I pick up $5. I said to her something like, there's a lesson in this. There's something to learn about this, and it has to do with reciprocity in life. I wasn't sacrificing anything. I gave away $1, a loonie, and I found a $5 bill, and it was there waiting for me. I think there's something universal in the aspect of that kind of experience, Garnet.
Absolutely. And when you think of it, with a 5-to-1 return, Gary, you should have given the homeless man $100.
Absolutely. If I'd had it, that would, of course, I'd never have made it to the next block. There would have been a homicide in Victoria if I had done that. But I do take your point, this idea of opening up, not to the point of sacrifice, unless that's absolutely necessary. I don't believe it's that often that the universe or Gaia or ultimate reality expects us to sacrifice ourselves and to live in a persistent condition of pain, unless there's some cause and effect relationship, some antecedents to that. But to give implies that there is at least the possibility, the potential of receiving, and this was a 5-time return, more or less instantly.
Yeah, no, it just demonstrates how karma can work, and quite often karma isn't that immediate. Like sometimes it takes a while to play out, and sometimes even over a number of lifetimes. But in your case, you had the satisfaction of, I'm going to give away $1 and I get $5 back in return. And it really does bring home the fact that the more you give, the more you're going to receive in one form or another, whether it's this life or in another life.
And it illustrates something I heard in a church in Seattle many, many years ago. It was after this experience, but nevertheless, I'll never forget it. It's thrown down as a bit of a challenge. You can't outgive the universe. You can't outgive spirit. Try it and see. I love that. That's part of the romance of life. See if you can outgive spirit. It can't be done, but try anyway. That's dancing in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And if more people adhere to that and try to see if they can outgive spirit, imagine what a wonderful world we'd have, a wonderful planet.
It would be paradise on earth, absolutely. Then we might not be coming back into these bodies, which is another thing I wanted to take up with you in the moment, Garnet. reincarnation itself in some parts of the world, and I'm thinking chiefly of India. You've got over 1 billion people there in a country with the land mass approximately of Texas. Wow. And most of the people there believe in reincarnation. And most of the people who believe in reincarnation see it as a cosmic burden. That's carrying their cross, which is to mix religious traditions, but nevertheless, people over in India, I have heard, talk about reincarnation in terms of what do I need to do to get out of this wheel of karma, this land of illusion. Over here in North America, guys like you and me, we have it pretty good. So when we think in terms of reincarnation, yes, we acknowledge that there are more lessons to be learned, maybe endless lessons, I don't know. But reincarnation for people in North America seems to be something more aspirational, like a chance to take that vacation you never got to take this time around. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And actually, that's closer to the reality than the view from India. As Albert says, that we come here and incarnate on our own choice, our own volition. No one forces us to come. We can stop coming here anytime we want to. Even if we have some lessons that we still want to learn, we can just say, to heck with it, I'm fed up with that hellhole called Earth, and I'm going to go somewhere else or stay in the spirit side. So it's entirely our choice. But when you finish a number of lives and you can see that there's some lessons that you missed, some challenges that you failed to achieve, most souls feel it as a moral imperative that the heck, I'm going to go back. I'm not going to let that planet defeat me. I'm going to go back and try again, and I'm going to win. And so that's why we keep on coming back and back, but we don't have to. And so that's the difference. Whereas the view from India is that you are reincarnated. You have to come back. You have no choice, and that somebody else chooses where you're going to incarnate into. And some of the views are that if you're a good person in this life, you may come back as a wealthy person, or if you're a bad dude, you may come back as a snake. And so that their idea is sort of you're on the wheel of karma, and you have to do something really good to get off of it, and you have no other choice. Whereas Albert says we do have a free choice, and we keep on coming back because we feel it's like this is something I need to do.
Garnet, when you have been working with Albert, and I heard you say you're on a little bit of a hiatus, at least from the writing part. So you're doing some living without necessarily doing writing right now. But do you have the sense from your travels, from what you looked at in the other dimensions and the other realms, that every person has something that they're supposed to be doing here? Or are some people here just to be on vacation, just for the experience of it? Does everybody have a job?
No, you have a job only if you give yourself a job. So it's really entirely up to each soul. And some souls come here, you're right, just to have a free and easy life, like they're on vacation. They don't really have anything planned in terms of learning. Other souls have a lot of things that they want to learn. Some souls come here, Suzanne, not for their own special reason, but to help others on their journey. So that, if somebody in your soul group wants to plan a life and they need somebody to fill a particular role, they may go to you and say, okay, can you fill this role? And you have no need to learn anything, but you will do so just to help the other soul. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
I've heard that as well, and I've also heard that as a possible explanation for why some people check out early as well, is that they've fulfilled what they came to do and they don't have a need to stay any longer. Unfortunately, Garnet, we are running out of time.
So we'll cover more territory next time.
I'll tell you, the hour went by like on a super fast train, but I am so glad that you were with us today and we had this conversation.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it very much, and I'd certainly love to do it again.
All right.
Coming up next,
Christine Upchurch, followed by Susan Harmon, and join us again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We've got 2 full hours again that we're going to do on Saturday.
And it's about blowing America's mind. Wow. Until then, have a great start to your weekend, everybody.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.